All right. Thank you, everybody, for coming. My name is Kayvan Mashayekh, and I'm your moderator today, and it gives me the great pleasure to introducing you to this amazing panel of wonderful individuals that I know. I want to start off to my left with Mr. Deepak Sikka, Ms. Triada Lakoutsi, and of course, Mark Foligno. The name of this panel is called Nobody Knows Anything. Why is it called Nobody Knows Anything? I'm so excited about this panel because it goes back to the William Goldman saying, I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with, that he said in the film industry that nobody knows anything because no matter what you do in the entertainment industry, in the entertainment field, whenever you create something, you have no idea whether or not it's going to work or not. This is more true than ever today because when you're looking at the world of where we are, where we were, and where we're going, all of this is now going to come and make sense when we start this discussion. Why? Because you have to understand in the world of entertainment, as we are, we started off a few years ago discussing fragmentation. The distribution model was all fragmented. There's so many choices when it comes to distribution that the landscape was all fragmented. Now that fragmentation has now turned into a world of convergence. Everything is converging. All these media things are converging and they're coming into one, and you have to find the Venn diagram right in the middle of where all these things are coming together. And in order to do that, you have to understand that entertainment, finance, and technology are the key components in trying to find that sweet spot where we can all find how we can work together to make ourselves more productive and have our content have more stickiness, more relative importance. Now, in order to do that, I want to kind of take us back and realize that in this industry, right now, we're trying to hang on to the dinosaur's tail before it turns into a fossil. What does that really mean? It means that in order for you to go forward in this world, you have to reach out to people in other industries and understand how they work so that you can integrate it with yours. These people to my right are very trusted individuals in my world because without them, I wouldn't be able to progress and move forward with my projects. To my left, Mr. Deepak Sikka is an expert in finance. In the middle, Triada is an expert in technology. And to her right, we have Mark Foligno, who's an expert in production. So I'm going to start off this discussion by talking to Triada. Triada, can you give me 3 examples of how technology can be utilized to further enhance the way producers can move forward with their projects and make themselves more efficient?
Sure. Can you hear me all right? Yep. First of all, thank you for inviting me to this panel. And I'm sure that, most of your producers, I really admire what you're doing. I find it extremely difficult because essentially what you do is from scratch, you're monitoring a whole big project, which is unbelievable for me. And for me, doing that without streamlining technology, without utilizing the tools that you have today, is a shame. So what I would say is, first of all, move away from your spreadsheets. I know that you all have your Word or your spreadsheets, and even though they are very powerful, and you share between you or between your professionals, between your teams, there's so many different tools that you can use in order to streamline, in order to have a single source of data. It's all about data these days, and I know that I might sound, very boring. I say, yeah, it's all about data, but maybe you don't realize that from your script, from your development, from the concept of an idea, the development stage, then the pre-production, then the production, then the post-production, marketing, etc., the whole end-to-end workflow, you should be able to have all this information in one single source. That would be one single source of truth, in one place, right? So move away from all the different, different tools, and try and have just one that you can connect, integrate with the others, and then whatever you want to find, especially when you're on the move, you can find it there.
Well, that seems to me like blockchain technology has the ability to do that. And as a matter of fact, there was actually a great panel on this from Film Chain by Maria Tanjala, and that they're going to be doing in focus here. So I want to know, is that what you're talking about? Is that one example of the many ways that technology can...
It's one example, blockchain, for the finance, right? The other one is that you're planning so many things, right? How do you plan? You talk to all those people. How do you do that? I mean, I'm sure that you have like a million of emails. I'm sure that you have different collaboration tools like, I don't know, like Dropbox, or something that you can put all your files there, or different tools for the script writing, or, to proofread, or...
So if you were to give an advice to Mark, who's a producer, and he's trying to go out there and produce a very big project, what are the things that you would want to tell him to utilize on his next production so that he can be more efficient in making sure that he will not only save money, because he's going to have to talk to Deepak.
Exactly.
He's going to ask Deepak for some money, and of course Deepak's going to say what? So I want to know what you can recommend. 3 things you can recommend to Mark to make his project more streamlined.
So first of all, in order to recommend, you need to understand the pain points. So you need to talk to a professional and say, what is your pain points right now? Why are you, the moment that you start production, what takes you so much time? I mean, what is it?
In my world?
Yes, in your world.
Well, obviously development is obviously every producer's nightmare, because it lasts forever and a day. But I think the developing scripts are very much, very rarely do you get a script coming to you and everybody's happy with it. And then, of course, once you get to a point where you're happy with it, then you've got to get all your financiers happy with it. And that's obviously sort of produces a load more changes.
So all these, I would imagine that it is quite painful to share all this information with these people, right?
Sure.
So how do you do it? You just use a few tools, or do you... The other thing that I want to say is that you need to talk to your professionals to understand what are the different tools. There's so many tools out there in the industry.
For example, I can throw out some examples. If you want to go location scouting now, you don't have to actually go through the location manager. There's apps and ways you can actually go and find locations by not just Google Earth, but other ways where you can actually do that search without actually taking the money and the time to go out and do that. Now, this could be very helpful for film commissions, of course, around the world that can utilize this technology, especially if it's 3D technology, and you can virtually go somewhere and see what these locations will look like. Another thing is cinematography. Another thing is if you're a director, you want to maybe use pre-visualization tools to help you previs your project before you move forward to do your film. These are all, and also blockchain. Blockchain technology is something that we're not going to get into because it's much more complicated than I can get into in this very simple session, but there's a thing called collection account management. And collection account management streamlines the process so that, for example, whenever somebody goes and purchases a ticket, for example, in a movie theater, downstream somebody in China gets paid. This is all done automatically through smart contracts. These are all examples, for example, of how you can do this. Now, Deepak, run me through some scenarios where, in the past, way of financing things have changed from 5 years ago to 3 years ago to today. How have things evolved? How, when you started financing a film 5 years ago, to how it's progressed to the present day? That's a good answer. Because this is why nobody knows anything, because it's all evolving so fast that we're all trying to keep up with it.
Yeah. Well, actually, the more things change, the more they stay the same. If we go back maybe over a span of 10 years rather than 5, because over 5 things haven't changed that much, but let's say 10 plus years ago, for those of you that were making films 10 years plus ago, probably the cornerstone of most investment decisions was the home entertainment line within the various windows as films were exploited. As that window has evaporated due to the demise of packaged goods in terms of DVDs and whatnot, and those revenues not having been replaced in that window by significant revenues, because your subscription video on demand and streaming revenues, the window comes right at the back end of a 3 to 5 year cycle, or as we spoke about a number of years ago, the rise of the streaming platforms has now turned those companies into pseudo studios, which are now bankrolling their own productions. So you're getting your money up front in a production advance. But for the independent producer, I think really actually what's ended up happening is your quest is always for hard equity in any project, unless you're going to a streaming platform, and they are essentially a bit like a broadcaster would do in the olden days in television, and they commission your show, which essentially means they're literally writing a check for your whole show. All you're doing then is finding, I can see one particular debt financer in the room, and finding somebody who can then finance that license fee that you'll get paid, ultimately.
So now that you have this proliferation of technology companies that are now owning basically the future of our industry and the entertainment industry, let me just throw out some facts and figures and see if you guys would be even shocked by this. In the United States of America, there are 271 streaming services. I want you to think about that. 271 streaming services just in the United States. The average cost of doing a 1-hour show is $6 million. Now that cost is escalated up to $17, maybe $20 million because of the proliferation of other streaming companies, other companies entering this foray and pushing up the cost. What happens is the cost of talent goes up, the cost of production goes up. How does this, Mark, affect you as a producer when you're trying to go out and trying to compete in that world, in the independent film world, and try to build up production values that you don't have those kind of streaming service cash available to you, but you're trying to go out and raise money through Deepak's older system of trying to raise equity and debt and soft money and all put it all together.
In terms of the indie film market, it's made it more hard. More complex. In terms of getting a film away, if you have that great script and you have that great director and you have that great lead, then yes, you can go to one of the SVOD players and present it to a Netflix or an Amazon Prime or an Apple Plus now. All of those people have deep pockets to be able to get your production done, but you have to have the right team to go into them and, of course, the right script. I think if you're looking for the traditional indie market, it's quite difficult to do. So what you have to do now is try and find that benefactor for the equity almost, where that money is really at risk. And so that 30% that you need as like a foundation stone to get the rest of the finance is the hardest task of any producer. So finding somebody who really believes in the project. There are some billionaires out there. If you can lucky enough to find one of those, that's really nice. So basically, find somebody who can sort of take a risk and I related to drilling for oil. 1 in 10 wells goes and you make a lot of money, but basically 9 of them don't.
Actually, you bring a very important point, because in the past 9 years, since 2010, Disney, Warner Media, and Netflix spent $250 billion in creating content in the past 9 years. In just this year alone, the top 16 streamers, they're spending $100 billion on content. So once again, when you're faced with this kind of daunting spend, I want to know, Deepak, from your perspective, how do you even try to approach a project without, if it's something that the streamers don't want, what happens to you then?
Harry-Kiri. No, it depends if you're creative. If you're the creative one, how much you spend, and whether you're a development investor, I guess. I think when we talk about streaming platforms, let's delineate that between episodic shows and film. And let's talk about put film to one side to a certain extent, because actually a large bulk of that money and capital you're talking about is actually not going into films, going to episodic drama and other such shows. I think when you're developing shows for let me backtrack that. Never before in the history of ever has there been such demand for shows as there is today. And there's going to be an unquenchable thirst for content for the next 3, 5, 7 years, just given the rise of all the different platforms and the way we consume media today. I don't think anybody's got any doubt of that. The question I guess you're asking is, how do I get a bite of that apple? And if the apple says if the apple's out of reach, how do I get there? That's a difficult question to answer. I think ultimately the pitch game, as Mark alludes to, is the most precarious of all. You can spend years developing a show. You can spend a lot of money on a lot of different writers and put a creative team together. That doesn't mean that when you get in a room, anyone's actually going to like your show. I still think that having talked to most of the, I'll be at Content London later on this week, and most of the drama producers that I know, they've either got a very strong track record having produced for the traditional linear broadcast market, or they are working back from specifically identifying their audience as to what those metrics are, what their four-quadrant analysis is, and working backwards into their, and what I call creative engineering. Essentially, they've got an idea, they know, they've worked out what their audience is, they then pull a team of writers and a good team of producers together to make that happen. Hand fits into glove, somebody will buy the glove.
Which actually brings me up to another point, which is what I call relationship viewing. Because with all this content that's being created, how do we curate? How do we find the thing that we want? I mean, can I just go out, for example, and look, Triada, tell me if this technology even exists today. Let's say I want to, there's a show that I saw, there was a Seinfeld episode, for example, that I saw where George was sitting on his wallet and it couldn't, it was kind of funny, but I don't know the name of the episode. Is there something I can like talk into and all of a sudden it brings it up for me?
Oh, really?
You know what I'm saying? Like,
this is where we're getting to.
These we're kind of getting to where, artificial intelligence on all these things.
Correct.
Could you talk about that?
And in other, exactly, and in other industries, for example, like in finance, they base all their operations in algorithmic decision making, right? So it's all about artificial intelligence and machine learning. So I think that entertainment and film production is a little bit behind that. So this is where we're heading to. You mentioned blockchain, that's based on AI and machine learning. And yeah, it's a separate discussion in another panel. But this is where we're heading to. We're heading to trying and automate and create some rules that will make our life a little bit easier, right?
Right.
So have one application, as you said, where I can go, all the producers, or from, a network, creating that network, and try and find the answers that I want, right? But that's not, this is where we're heading to, and that's why it's a collaboration of all the producers, is understanding, and that's why I keep saying it's understanding the pain points. We used to, when we are in a situation where it's like, oh, yeah, I have this problem, but then we don't really discuss that problem, we just find solutions directly, but not solutions for the future, solutions like that they can get us out of the problem right now. But if we just discuss, and that's why I asked you earlier, what is your pain points? These can be turned into an opportunity, and then we can build that platform that you just mentioned.
Right. So, for example, you used AI, and which is kind of what I was talking about. Relationship viewing means, in other words, in order for us to really embrace a show now, think about it this way. Let me just bottom line it for you. 8,760. What does that number mean to you guys? 8,760 is the number of hours in 1 year. If you break it down, you spend a third of it sleeping, a third of it working, and a third of it left for yourself. As you grow older, as you age, the value of those hours becomes exponentially important. So for you to lock yourself into a show that 31,000 hours of 31,000 shows that are out there globally around the world, you must have a relationship with your content. In order for you to have a relationship with your content, there has to be something for you there for you to embrace. AI can help you with that, but it's not going to be the end game. So, let's talk about what I call relationship viewing.
Sure.
Tell me how that, helps your decision making whenever you're trying to create projects for yourself, from the financing aspect and also from the producing side.
Sure. I mean, from my point of view, you obviously, in terms of getting a project away, it takes such a long time to get certain projects away that you have to be really, really married to it, in the sense that you really have to be passionate about it. If you don't, then forget it, because it can take 5 years. You look at some of the biggest films that have been made, the one that I always mention is the Dallas Buyers Club, which took 20 odd years to get off the ground. So if you're not wedded to a project, then don't do it. But in terms of getting relationships away with and finance away because of those relationships, then you basically, in a traditional sense, in the UK, up until recently, there was EIS, which was a very big way of getting that equity money together to actually finance your film. There was almost like an 18-month hiatus on EIS in film because of perhaps some people misusing it, and so the HMRC took a view that they weren't going to allow EIS to be utilised in film financing. That has actually softened a little, and now EIS has opened up again, and there's lots more EIS companies getting approval, but in a slightly different way. They're actually getting it in a structured way of a slate of films rather than an individual sole project. But that does still open up money there. But of course, that money can't be used in collaboration with government money from a BFI or a screen. So you have to do them either individually, and even in the cleverest finance, there is risk in it if they're putting them together in any finance plan. So I think that you've got to decide how you're going to get this thing away, and of course, making sure that you know who you want to partner it with. But also, you have to look at its audience. And what I'd say with any film is make sure that you have a distributor with real skin in the game to ensure that you actually have...
Which is a lot of times right now, what I'm hearing is in independent film world, and you could probably tell me if I'm right or not, sales agents want to get involved, if you're lucky enough to have a sales agent, very early on, so they have that skin in the game, so when it comes to time for them to sell the movie from territory to territory, they actually are incentivized to do that. Would you agree with that or not, Deepak?
Yeah, I think with a lot of the sales agents, the crashing change that's happened in the last 6 to 7 years is that most of the good ones have all moved, are all trying to move in, or the larger ones are rather, not good, that's the wrong word, are trying to move into physical production, mainly to secure their operating pipeline and also their future revenues. Because if you get in early enough on a project and you support the development and you pre-sell it and you can steer what you think are marketable quality assets like good on-screen cast, that right director and the right package, essentially the sales agents are now moving into that executive production side, rather when I say physical production, really they're executive producing shows now a lot earlier than they used to, and following them all the way down into physical production to make sure those films do get delivered on time when they think they're going to get delivered, so therefore they can sell them, and those distributors are going to get their money, going to get stock to trade when they think they're going to get it, not 6 months late, which wrecks everybody's P&Ls.
You brought another good point, feeding the pipeline, for example. And now the pipeline is actually going to get fatter. With the advent of 5G technology, it's like giving sugar to a diabetic. I mean, you're going to have faster speeds. You're going to have more content being jammed in this pipeline. How does that affect that model that you were, because now it's like I gotta feed this pipeline. I gotta get these projects out. I have no idea whether or not they're going to go anywhere, but I just got to keep feeding this pipeline because there's going to be a lot more content being created.
Well, that's where I hear a lot of complaints from. Well, not complaints again. That's the wrong word to use. Shall we say a lot of feedback from the creative community, whereby you get sales agents and distributors wanting to get involved in shows much earlier and sign them onto their books, so therefore they're securing a pipeline of revenues for their future P&Ls in future years. However, a lot of the independent companies don't have the wherewithal to have checkbooks to write for development. So whilst they're coming in earlier into projects, they're not providing capital. Most of them are providing expertise rather than that development capital, which is actually sorely what the industry needs.
So do you both agree that, Mark and Deepak, that still the critical element for independent filmmakers is development money? Is that still like the big challenge?
Yeah, development money is difficult to find. I think that there are companies out there that provide it. And of course, the traditional sense, I've not heard of any Netflix development money. They basically want a project package before they go to Netflix. There may be producers who get development money on Netflix, but I don't know. Whereas traditional broadcasters, if you were doing a television film, they would pay for development if you had the right team going in. But development money for an independent film producer, the only way that it's been done in the past is either, again, a benefactor who likes a project, or a traditional finance plan using EIS. That's, we're talking now, not 10 years ago or 15 years ago with Section 48 and all that, at a very different time.
Just come back to your very first question about the challenges and what's changed over the last 3 to 5, 7 years. What's changed?
Please.
Actually, not much has changed. So top and bottom, development and hard equity are the two hardest things to find. They're still the two hardest things to find. If you're fortunate enough to go charging through the revolving doors of a streaming platform, and you're fortunate enough to essentially get a, in inverted commas, commission, then that's great. Unfortunately, the world has not moved completely in that direction now. All there are is, just because there are more people than ever before wanting, the demand is large for shows from a consumer point of view. That doesn't mean that also there's not been an explosion in people trying to make these shows. So whilst there's an unquenchable thirst for content, there's also more producers out there than ever before.
But everyone still goes through the same writers.
Right. So, Triada, are you familiar with this whole, how does 5G technology factor into a lot of the decision-making things that you as a technologist now have to kind of anticipate in your business?
Well, I think that if we see it like as simple as 5G means quicker internet, more content, the people will really consume everywhere more and more content. So that means more data for us. So the moment that you have more data, then you can analyze, you can see, you spoke earlier about, targeting, about your audience, what do they want? When I develop a script, where do I see
Is that known
my
as
audience?
metadata, by the way? Is that called metadata?
Exactly.
Okay.
So
Okay.
this is all the, yes.
Yeah,
I take for granted sometimes, and I don't, more like a nerd
okay.
behind my
That's right.
laptop. So yes, all this metadata. So then what you do with all this metadata is that you group, right? And then you analyze, and then you can really, let's say, project better for the future what will be the reaction of my audience. Will this show or this film will be, very popular among my target audience? Should I change a little bit because, look at this trend right now. With all the social media, with 5G and social media, you get all the data that you will need in order to project better for your development.
So what I'm hearing now is like this is only the dawn, the beginning of more confusion about more things that nobody knows anything about, and which is all the more important for us to reach out to other industries in finance and technology to help us as entertainers, as filmmakers, as producers, go to the next level. So this DTC, that we're direct-to-consumer model that all big studios have now adopted after Netflix completely blew the doors open and has 71% market share. I don't know. You can check all this data online, but it's what's remarkable is trying to play catch up with a big behemoth like that leaves many of them, scrambling to spend more money just to try to, catch up because the model is changing. So how do you guys see it? Looking into the crystal ball, if you can.
Well, I think my view is there's going to be, huge amounts of content created for a generation that don't particularly want to watch a massive 2-hour feature all the time. So there's going to be 5-minute segments created for...
And there's Quibi for that. That's going to be launching in April
and there will be plenty of other players following into that market. So the idea that short films were worthless all those years ago, which was what we were all told, isn't the case anymore because people want to watch something entertaining for a very short bite-sized time. So I think there is a sort of new market which is just evolving, which none of us are in. I'm not in, and Deepak I know is not in. But basically that is evolving, and that's going to come thick and fast, I think. But for the traditional marketplace, the long content and the one-off films, you do still have to get. For any one-off film to be a success, you have to get some P&A behind it. And the old-fashioned promotion advertising of a film, it's done in a different way over social media and all the access to social media. But when Netflix spend, I think it was
12 billion this year.
Well, I was talking about The Irishman. The Irishman, right. I think, is 140 million.
The Irishman's 250. They spent 250 million on it.
Wow. Well, there you go. So to get that.
But don't quote me. You can find out for yourself.
So to have that kind of spend, they're going to promote the hell out of that to make sure that they get a load of new users onto that platform. But I don't think it's just that traditional long form. Film that we all used to go to the cinema for. Obviously, the multi-episodic TV is really rapidly, the box set generation is here. But then on top of that, we have the bite-sized generation of seeing all these people do these short films. And so there's like 3 very diverse markets and very different ways of storytelling that have to be evolved to actually fill those markets.
Okay, and now let's talk about another thing, which is very important to me. This on-demand consumption where we're at any time, at any place, we can consume content and try to find the thing that attracts us most to that. When you're going out and creating content for a project, do you always think about, okay, I'm going to make a series of projects just to feed that particular pipeline because I know it's underserved?
Well, of course, the indie producers, there's some very good examples of films which have gone for that sort of horror genre.
Basically, you stick to that genre because you know there's now a streaming service that needs that content. So now that I know that's lacking that, I'm just going to feed that pipeline.
Aim at that.
Exactly.
I mean, it's a ridiculous thing, but if you look at Netflix and Amazon Prime and some of the biggest authors in the world are romantic novelists. And basically, there isn't a huge amount of romance. There is a new streaming service called Passionflix, which is Elon Musk's sister, Tosca Musk, I think her name is. And they've started that in America, where they actually only go for romantic novel 1.5-hour dramas, and that actually, I believe, is doing very well at the moment. So you have to look at your genre, see what's been underplayed, and then go for that if you want to just create content. But of course, a lot of producers want to produce a story they're passionate about and not necessarily go for where there's market opportunity. But I think that, having done it enough and long enough now to realize, don't always go for your passion project, because your passion might not be the general audience passion. So just make sure of that.
Well, one of the things also that you bring up that makes me curious is, what if you create content and you start thinking outside the box? So let's say you want to think about taking your film and putting it into a game engine and make it immersive so that it has VR and AR capabilities. Triada, can you talk about that for us, about us?
Sure. I mean, again, another way of utilizing technology, right? So it's so immersive that all the users, then again, it's all about metadata. You monitor all the reactions. And again, you can see if that content, that genre, you can take it to a different level.
Yeah.
So, yes, VR and where we're going,
I mean, to some people, it's still a little bit awkward, putting on those headsets and walking around, and you're kind of like,
yeah, but
in this other world.
I think that where we're going, the technology, these big, like
clunky things that you put on there.
Clunky ones, yes, they are disappearing, right? They're going to be so.
And you're already starting to see it in other ways, in the sports arena, where now you can basically attend the game as if you're actually at the arena.
Yeah.
So
and be
in
plugged
essence,
into it.
And where we're heading to is actually that the audience, I mean, just the viewer will participate in the content, right?
Yeah.
So that's another way where the future goes, because as you very well said, I mean, we're having now a generation that they are kind of getting bored to watch a whole movie of even an hour, even 1 hour and a half is too long for them. So they want to participate. So they want to see multiple things.
Yeah,
so
you're in a swipe left, swipe right world. So I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, it's the truth.
So they need to participate. So again, technology helps them to do that. So you take your content and then you'll be able to, it will be like a hybrid between like a game and also a movie, right? You kind of participate, you enact there. You're becoming the actor in a way. I mean, look at all the game industry and everything is
it's massive.
Huge. It's massive.
Yeah,
That's another content.
Someone said it's
right?
4 times the size of the film and television.
Yeah,
but I think that they will merge
and I believe
together.
there's a quote by Reed Hastings of Netflix. He said that they don't fear other streaming services coming online. What they fear is the gaming industry. Games like Fortnite, for example, because it takes away the attention from the younger generation who would otherwise be watching their content.
Sure.
But it is a content if you think about it. So I think this is where we need to move towards.
So what I'm saying to you, if you're a producer and you're thinking about creating a movie, would you also be putting that as part of your package when you're going out there to pitch it? Say, hey, by the way, this has immersive qualities to it that we want to pursue.
Absolutely.
I
think that.
And Deepak, would you want to chime in on this also? Go ahead.
Sure. No, I mean, in terms of if you can create something which actually takes across into the gaming world, of course, then you're onto a winner. And a lot of producers don't think of that. They just basically want to make their film or their television series and that's it. But of course, if you can come with some kind of franchise which actually enables you to move into the gaming world as well, and it's very difficult sometimes to move from games to films, as we've proven lots of games haven't worked as films. But I think that, the other way around, there's certainly opportunity for games to come from films. And so yes, you have to think about that. You have to think about all of the other elements that could be a revenue stream for your investors. And it's sort of with films, there's so many revenue streams if you get it right. Of course, there's plays, or you can do something on that front. There's games, there's merchandising of toys and T-shirts and all that. So there's lots of places you can go. I've never had one of those, but
Right.
definitely would want one.
And to that point, sorry, just to add that, for example, in order to project again and using technology, you can just start with a small prototype, right? So as we call it in technology, so you take your content, it's let's say a movie, and then you create a prototype that will be this hybrid, so as to show to your, in order to fund. I'm not expert in finding the money, but you need to show them something, right? So technology can help you create that little prototype and project how my film can also can go towards game, but it's not a game, because I don't want to create game, right? I really want to stay in the film industry. But again, the future says that you need to make your viewers, more, to participate more, right? More passionate. So these prototype things, you can do it, and then you can pitch it better to get the funding.
Yeah.
I think you're right. That just harking back on what Mark was talking about, the traditional sense of exploitation, where if you come up with a franchise, then you can go wide across many different forms of exploitation, beyond theatric, those ancillary revenues that might bleed into merchandising or games. And there are pipes go both ways. You can take those franchises and come to the film or the television business, as Marvel has proven. What you can, I suppose, there are emerging technologies in between. You said augmented reality is here, virtual reality is kind of here, it's getting here. Technology will improve, it's like the invention of the radio. Virtual reality is now here. The thing that, I guess, from a content point of view, that's probably a burgeoning market, and it'll probably exist for maybe 1 to 5 years, and we're probably halfway through it right now, is interactive film, which is that kind of weird hinterland between where games are and where feature films are. They are generally, you've got to think that your gaming community is a direct to consumer platform. You're selling your product directly either through Steam, Nintendo, PlayStation or Xbox, as opposed to going through a distributor who will then be selling off to other people.
Right.
You're creating your interactive film, and which has got some playability. So again, the post-production process, which Mark knows a lot about, is you may shoot the film similarly to a traditional, but your back end in terms of how your deliverables will be dramatically different, because you've got to put that technology in there, and you've created a piece of content which then pops onto those platforms, which have got how many eyeballs globally? I mean, you can think about all those platforms have got, and people buy those things. So the funding model for things like interactive film, like I've just funded a slate of 5 interactive films, for the next 4 years, and for one player, and we've got the direct data of seeing, well, we've spent £500,000, we've spent £50,000 on that one, we spent £250,000 on that one, we spent £500,000 on that one, 300 on that one, and we can literally see, because we've got the territorial demographic data from PlayStation, from Nintendo and Xbox, in terms of where these things have sold, who they've sold to, and therefore you've got a better idea, therefore, of making your sales projections, or rather, you've got a better idea of creating more robust sales projections, which people like me think have got a better chance of financing against.
Right.
You don't get that opportunity in other areas, so that's what
we're going to have to wrap it up. Is there any questions that anybody has in the audience? We have time for maybe 2 or 3 questions really quick. Gentleman right here in front, do you have a...
Oh, it's okay. You talked a lot about metadata, so where do you find all those information, like as a freelancer or sort of thing?
The question is, you talked a lot about metadata. Where do you find this information as a freelancer?
Yeah, right. That's a very good question. There are different ways. Of course, all the big companies, they protect as much as possible all their metadata, right? You would expect that, because that's how they strategize. However, there is now, they are trying to build, similar to the free software that is out there, they're trying to build a platform so that people, like especially in the film industry, they can go and they can search, they can find what they're looking for is not built yet. There's not, I cannot tell you right now that go into that URL and you find that what you're looking for, but this is where we're heading to.
Yeah, because it's all,
it's like all this,
it's
yeah,
so protected
also the
because they
source.
spend so much money to try to like incubate it and keep it for themselves, because that data and that the algorithms that they set up to sell everything is based on this.
But having said that, that's why I said, I mean, all the source coding right now, right, is out there. So again, it's bringing people together and building these platforms in order to have everyone making advantage.
Two more questions and we're going to wrap it up. Go ahead.
Just about the sustainability of a company and how you can get residuals from the work you've done. I've heard like Netflix will buy you out completely, so you don't get any money from the future. You're just basically almost like an employee for a period of time, sort of thing. Is there anything on how that model's shifting or anything that you have to do to protect that?
Yeah, I think that you're absolutely right. Netflix do buy you out, and even for territories that they don't own, like China and stuff, they try to control those too. And I just wanted to quickly say on China as well. China have, I think, 2 of the biggest SVOD platforms in the world. So it's out of the 5, 2 of them are in China. But basically, in terms of having revenue streams going forward, it's basically harder to get that from independent film. It's easier to get it from residual TV series because you basically then sell to, if you create something for the BBC or ITV or a co-production between HBO and the BBC, you can control the rest of the world. And they may sell it for you and they may take a big slice of that, but you actually hold the revenue. So that model still works. Independent film, we've been involved in a few films together, and there's not many that pay you residuals. When they do come, it's like a nice surprise, but it's very difficult to actually get those in independent film. I mean,
one last question. I think the lady over there had. Sorry, go ahead, ma'am.
So in terms of the immersive technology, outside of the big budget, nobody has really used it. I mean, what is your view? Who will be potentially using it, and not just a marketing ploy? Because, like, for instance, like Marvel or big studios, they use it as a marketing ploy.
So basically, immersive technology, big companies use it. How can the smaller companies or smaller entities? Guys, want to tackle that question? It's the last one before we have to wrap it up because it's
Well, my view on VR, by the way, is VR is going to be next to cinemas. A lot of the time, you're going to have new complexes built with a VR platform or VR room next to the cinemas. And what the brands will do is they will move the Marvel films into those VR rooms. But already there's Harry Potter and Star Wars in London where you can go into these not brilliant experiences, but people have done it. But I think it's like £40 to £50 a ticket to do this. So compared to a cinema ticket, there's a lot more revenue, for potentially in the VR world. But that is definitely where it's going to expand, I think, over the next few years, where people are going to go into these rooms, take their kids, have fun. So anything on a brand that you're creating and giving an entertainment in the virtual reality world, I think, is going to have value.
Okay, we're going to have to wrap this up real quick. Yeah. Two takeaways from each one of you. What are the 2 takeaways that you have?
Well, I mean, as
everyone over here to know.
As a producer, I would say, absolutely, before you go into production, make sure, doesn't matter how big or small your film is, that you have a route to market. You have a distribution partner, because if you don't, your film will die on its arse. So just make sure that you have a distribution platform and they have real money in the game, skin in the game, because if they don't have any money in it, they will have you over. Okay. The other end is the actual development. If you're a producer and you've got as many grey hairs as me, make sure you close as early as you possibly bloody can, because it's a pain in the ass going into pre-production or production without full financial closure. And you tend to have very, very few sleepless nights, or many sleepless nights.
Excellent. Triada,
For me, operationally, speak to a professional. Tell them what are your pain points, how you can, in your everyday activities, like for the development, for the financing, projecting, the reports, everything. Speak to a professional, explain them the pain points. There are so many solutions out there. You can have only one place, you can have all your data, all your different sub-projects, because we're talking about not only one big field, but now where we're heading to is like different projects. So speak to someone. There are always, always many solutions out there.
2 takeaways. Find a lawyer who knows how to use a spreadsheet. Okay, that's a bit like finding.
way from
That's a bit like explaining. That's a bit. Well, find
Like
a
a
lawyer who can
unicorn.
use a business system, like Zytec. Shameless plug for you. Yeah, it's a bit like explaining colour to a blind man or snow to a Polynesian. But try and find legal expertise who understands how to use numbers. I think that's probably your biggest takeaway and understands the technology. Second one, I think, echoing Mark's point about distributors. I think you shouldn't walk into a room pitching people for money or a distributor or a channel unless you can answer a scheduler's question or a distributor's question as to, or a head of marketing inside a distributor's question of who's the audience and how am I going to reach them. And if you haven't done that yourself before you walk in the room, then don't bother. What are you doing relying on other people to tell you who your audience is, how you're going to speak to them, and how you're going to get your money back for your investors? Ultimately, that's the thing you should be doing right up front while you're going through your manufacturing or production process at that point.
And my final takeaway with all this technology, all this information that was given to you by this esteemed panel over here, the most important thing is the power of your relationships with the people that you have. You must build relationships with people outside your industry and make sure that they know the value of bringing it all together, because without their help, you cannot build trust. And without trust, you have nothing. These three individuals are here because of me, because of the relationship I've had with them and the amount of help that they've given me and try to move projects forward. And without them, I wouldn't be able to be sitting here and having them. So I want to thank you, Deepak. I want to thank you, Triada. I want to thank you, Mark. And one final thing, takeaway from me, from this conference, why did I give you all this information? Because I want you to do what? Thank you very much. This concludes